Hello everyone. I am Dr. Nalani Butler from Kennesaw State University, and I'm also on the COSMA Board of Commissioners. Today we have Doug Hall, who is the General Manager of the Toyota Center for the Houston Rockets, and we also have Kristen Harper, who is the Senior Director of Human Resources at the Houston Rockets. So I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves, and then we will dive into some questions that we created for the two individuals.
Ladies first.
Okay, Doug, thanks. So I am Kristen Harper. I am the Senior Director of Human Resources for the Toyota Center and Houston Rockets, and I will celebrate 9 years with the organization next month. So my 10th season that we're in the middle of, or kind of just starting our season. And so looking forward to sharing with you guys some of our best practices.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Doug Hall. As Dr. Butler said, I'm the General Manager of the Toyota Center. And in our case, I'm a member of the Houston Rockets organization. So like many professional sports arenas and franchises, we're one organization. So we manage the Toyota Center. And that's my primary responsibility, all the events, not just basketball, but concerts and family shows and third parties, and then the 24/7 operation of the facility. So it's my second tour of duty with the Rockets. I was here when we opened the building, and I've done several things in between, including working on the 2 Final Fours in Houston and the Super Bowl, and also opened the Dynamo Stadium back in 2011.
Wonderful. So I will start with the first question. We're going to go back and forth with both Doug and Kristen. So the first question I have is, can each of you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be in the current role that you are in?
Sure, I'll continue with Doug's lead and I guess going first. So I am a Houstonian, so I don't have a story of moving around teams across the nation like some other professionals do, but like many of you students, went to college, decided on my focus, and attended grad school, did a couple of internships, or back then it was called a residency, which then started my career in HR, and through multiple different roles and leading different departments and organizations, eventually landed here at the team in Houston. I'm actually a Houstonian as well. So to say I'm a fan, I would say I've always been a fan since I'm born and raised here in Houston from the southeast side of town. And I remember watching the championship games back in the 90s and celebrating those wins. So it's, as our president likes to say, living the dream. It in a sense is for me because I am a native Houstonian. So just landed here, just where my career ended up taking me here. So I don't have a fabulous sports story, but put in the time and the work and the experience prior to leading up to this role. And it's been a good fit over the last several years.
Thank you.
I am also a Houstonian, which is unusual in this business to be in your hometown. But unlike Kristen, I have bounced around the country and ended up back here about in 2003 when we opened the Toyota Center. But in between, I got a journalism degree from Texas A&M, and then spent 4 years in the Marine Corps, and then went to Ohio University for their Master's in Sports Administration program, and did an internship in facility management in Pittsburgh at the hockey arena, and that started my career. And then spent some time in Jacksonville, Florida, back in Pittsburgh, and then Toyota Center in 2003. And as I said, a couple other things in between, and then rejoined the Rockets back in September of 19, and the pandemic hit in March of 20. And so, it's been a interesting ride the second time around as well.
Thank you. And thank you for your service. Also, Ohio University is one of the best programs in sport management, and they're also a part of the COSMA organization. So
Well, I snuck in a long time ago. How's that?
Great. You made it what it is today. So my next question to you all, both of you all have, different roles, HR and then also facility management. But can you please share with us what an average week looks like for you? And I know things have not necessarily been average as of lately, but what does an average week look like normally under normal circumstances?
Well, I would say for HR, we have our own seasons as well. It depends on the season. So yes, we have our on season as now, and we have our off season. But then in the middle of all of that, we also have other seasons of, is it employee review time, and is it time to be reviewing and calculating merit increases and bonuses? Is it the time of year where we are doing some annual trainings and development with staff? Is it the time of year that we're focusing, maybe on some wellness things? It really just depends on the time of year. So just like the NBA has its seasons and it has draft time and trade time and whatnot, HR kind of has the same thing. We go through multiple different seasons of what we're doing. So today, right now, it's benefit season for about 60 days, where we're going. We've made quite a bit of, reviewed and analyzed benefits and what's best for our staff and our team. And so now it's time to execute it. So that's the season, if you want to call it, that we're in right now from an HR standpoint.
Okay, very nice. And just, I'm going to interject real quick with a question. So for a student in sport management, if they wanted to get an internship with the Houston Rockets organization, for instance, what would be the best way for them to apply? And then also just kind of the timeline, at what point and what season throughout the year would they apply for that position?
So I would tell you it's probably different for every league meaning between NBA, MLB, NFL, etc. So for us and most other NBA teams, we do those sorts of things where we're posting, for lack of better terms, we're searching and seeking those interns during our off season. So for us, that's typically during the summer is our off season. So that is the time when we start preparing and planning for our interns. Now we also, again, we're an NBA team, and every team could be slightly different, but we also aim to not have just one semester long internship. We like to keep them both in the fall and spring, and have a full season, as we call it, or for a student, a full year internship experience with us. But for us as an NBA team, the summertime is when we start preparing for those.
Very nice. Yeah. And that's great advice for students. So definitely get your resume, cover letter, and all of that, up to date for the summer so you can apply if you want to work for the NBA. So the same question goes to you, Doug. Can you share with us what an average week looks like for you?
Well, the facility business is really dictated by which sport you're in, as Kristen said. The basketball season, obviously, typically October to April, May, June, and then summer is somewhat of a downtime. In the soccer world, it's kind of March until October, November, and so it's really dictated by the sports. But an average week is not average. It is. We average three or four events a week during our busy months, and so that's most of those are Friday, Saturday, Sunday. With the midweeks as well. So a lot of nights and weekends and holidays, and that's just part of the sports and entertainment business. And so most people understand that when they're getting into it, and they say it's no big deal. I'm used, or I'll make that work. And then you start with on the younger side, it's not a problem. And then as you start to have a family and have kids and stuff like that, that becomes a more of a challenge. But most people, as I say, they either get used to that, and that's part of the lifestyle, or you get out and figure out some other way to do it. But plenty of opportunities, and people, you just got to work hard. And this is not a business that's designed to work remotely, and it's not. Our business is not, and so this has been a challenge during the pandemic. But if we're not in the building, hosting events, then we're not really doing what we're generally paid to do.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing. So no matter if you're hosting an event, like a sporting event or a concert or anything, even when the event's not going on, you are still doing the planning for that event. So it's just always around the clock.
That's right. I mean, it's this is an event management business, whether it's sports or concerts or family shows, and so that's no different than planning a parade or planning, an HR, onboarding session. But our business is just event management. So yeah, it's typically a couple days on the front side, and then the back side of an event is finishing up the payroll and the paperwork and the after action reports, and cleaning up your mistakes and whatever the case may be. So it's not just an event night, it's multiple days on the front side and on the back side. But, we are fortunate to have a good sized staff. And so, we, not everybody works every event, but you work most of the events, and you get in a rotation, and, that spreads the load pretty well.
Thank you. So my next question, and this is for the both of you all. So what skills, just in your current position, what skills do you think are the best skills to have in order to be in a position that you're currently in? Whether that's the GM of the Toyota Center, or, whether that's the Senior Director of Human Resources. What skills do you think are the best ones to have?
So for me, I would say, a passion to see others succeed, a passion to help others grow, but also you've got to be open to learning and developing yourself. In HR, especially over the last 8 to 12 months, there's been so many updated and new regulations that have been coming out due to the pandemic. And so not only from a personal development standpoint, but there's always legal updates that you've got to stay up to date on. And sometimes it's not fun. And you don't always know every one of them by heart. You're having to keep your notes, so to say, so that you can refer back to them to try and make sure you're keeping up with them and giving the right advice or guidance. But just that's, you've got to be willing to do the work from a learning and education standpoint, from an HR side. And sometimes conversations can be really tough, or really suck to have with others, in regards to feedback and how well they're doing, or maybe not how well they're doing, or maybe that difficult conversation of, it might be time to separate and move on, and how can I help you do that? And so you have to have a heart, sometimes a soft heart, but sometimes a hard heart, right? To be able to have some of those conversations with staff too. So I would say there's multiple different skill sets that you've got to be open and willing to tackle and have under your belt.
Thank you.
On our side of the business, it's really people and process management, right? So we're interfacing with contractors and staff and vendors and clients, whether it's a promoter or the basketball team or whatever the case may be. And so you've got to deal with people all the time, and you have to understand how to ask the right questions. You're planning an event, so not everybody's forthcoming, and so you're really anticipating and planning and really worst case planning most of the time. So dealing with people, understanding processes, understanding kind of timelines, and then accountability is a big factor for us. And then the final thing I would say is flexibility, right? Because our business is not static; it's dynamic, right? And people are dynamic. 18,000 people on a good basketball game, 3,000 right now. Everybody's got a different goal and a different interest and a different want, and kind of channeling those in the right direction requires a lot of flexibility. So if you're not a people person, this is not the right business, generally speaking, for you.
Thank you. So, obviously 2020 and 2021 have been very difficult years for everyone, but we've seen the impact that it has had on the NBA. And I would love if you all could just share your experience of how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected your role with the organization, and how it has been just a lot different this year, and how you all are both getting through that.
I think I'm still getting through it. I don't know that I have gotten through it yet. It's been challenging because part of HR's role is keeping your finger on, for lack of better terms, on your staff and on your team and on the culture and the morale, and being available for someone on the spot when needed, whether I need them or they need me. And that's not the case now. Yes, everyone's a phone call away, but it's just not the same. It's just not the same as in person. It's not the same as me attending a department meeting on the fly. It's not the same as the staff being together to show appreciation, to show enthusiasm, to give the congratulations for a job well done, right? Whether it was executing an event or whether it was, and maybe it's a large sale that an individual made in one of our departments. It's just not the same. Same with wellness. You know, we often have multiple different wellness activities we do each year as an organization, whether it be a staff 5K or another friendly competition we do, which all plays into the culture and the morale of the organization when you're in person. And we can't do all that right now. It just can't happen. And so trying to attempt to maintain that positive team environment and trying to maintain a good culture and a morale right now is difficult. You know, you can, you know, instead of the manage by walking around, right, that you do and that you tell your team to do, that make sure that, you know, when's the last time you got up? You need to go, you know, do a walk around and show face, and you can't do that now. And so, yes, you can pick up the phone and call somebody and say, how are you doing? But it's just different on the phone, right? Kind of like Doug said, we're not a remote organization. We're not a business that can operate remotely at all times. You know, maybe your oil and gas down the street, they rotate, or they kind of do both at all times, remote and in person. And in the sports and the event planning world, it just doesn't work really well. Or let me rephrase that. We've made it work really well, but it's not ideal.
Yeah.
It's just not ideal for our industry, really. So, you know, we're doing our best to make it work, but it's definitely an adjustment and not the same. And I hate to say in a negative way, but it really kind of is. It's not the same as being in person and being able to provide more value in person, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. You know, teaching remotely with students, I think it's been a huge adjustment. But, you know, there is a lot to look forward to. And is there anything you've implemented to, you know, help try to boost the morale and the culture within the organization?
That's hard to say. You know, even our staff meetings are virtual right now, and I don't really like them.
Yeah.
I want to be in person. It just makes a big difference to be in person, to celebrate the victories and whatnot, and not referring to on the court, but in the business office. So, you know, things we've implemented, you know, for the first, I don't know, 6 months, I feel like, you know, we did more than what we're doing now, because we kind of, our business has shifted with the season starting. And so before, we were really focusing on a lot of not only communication, but also just focusing on staff's wellness. And so we were doing things related to mental health and things related to physical health. So we were having group Zoom workouts together.
Oh, okay.
You know, and some, you know, our strength and conditioning coach was participating, and he was putting them on and doing, you know, yoga with the team. That anybody want to jump on and do yoga together, because we used to do that in the past in the building. Some mental health things that we would do. We've done some things via social media too with the group, as far as, you know, show us what it's like in your home office. Show us what it's like in your, you know, maybe it's your virtual schooling that you're juggling with your kids as well. So we've tried to do some things like that, but social media related, to just keep staff engaged and let them see kind of a day in the life. And when you're not in the office, what does it look like?
Very cool. And thank you so much for sharing. I think a lot of, instructors will get a lot out of that. Just trying to figure out, you know, how to make the experience in the classroom and just create a culture in their class. So, you know, thank you so much. And it just sounds like you all are really close there to be working out and sharing everything. So that's something for the students to look forward to when they decide to work in the sports world. So Doug, can you tell us a little bit about how COVID-19 has had an impact on you and what you're doing?
Well, we went from averaging about 10 events a month to 0. So we went from March 12th to really all the way till end of December without hosting events. And so, you know, we became professional planners in a real truest sense, planning for working out of the office, planning on bringing people back to the office, you know, planning on disinfecting and cleaning and new techniques and new equipment, and, you know, understanding what the virus is and how it affects the facility, your filtration system, you know, your all your systems, and then meanwhile we're paying attention to the NBA and what changes they were making down in Orlando in terms of playing in the bubble and other leagues and other teams. And so, anyway, yeah, it's affected our business immensely. And but as we geared up for December and January, we were able to, kind of be ahead of the ball game. And so, everything we'd started planning back in April and May, didn't come to fruition until December. But we were ready for it, and right now we're occupied or, filling the building to about 20%, and the state is limited it to 50%, but at 6 feet distance, which really in our case makes it 20 to 25%. So anyway, that's been a learning experience. We're one of 5 NBA facilities that's open to the public, and so we're continuing to improve that process all the time, and we're hoping by summertime we'll be back to doing other business as well. But like everybody else, we're watching the vaccine and understanding what that transition will look like.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. So 1 in 5 NBA facilities are opening up to fans right now. So you all are really being the trendsetters for how other teams are probably going to, maneuver in the future. So with that being said, it looks like you all are bringing some fans and also staff to your facility now. And like you said, Doug, you all are kind of leading the way. You're one of 5 teams doing that. What does that look like from an office standpoint, from an HR standpoint, and then also from a facility management standpoint? How are you keeping both the fans and then also the staff and the employees? How are you keeping them safe?
You're on mute, Kristen.
I'm sorry. It's from a staffing standpoint, it's definitely been unique in a role that I never thought I would take, and that would be of almost like feeling like I'm a healthcare worker in a sense, and trying to make sure I'm staying up to date with CDC guidelines in conjunction with our team doctor as well. And in the past, staff were definitely never required to contact me and let me know that they're ill and they're feeling sick. And so now, for that requirement and to be tracking who's ill, who's not feeling well, telling them when they can and can't come back into the office has definitely been very unique. And at the end of the day, our priority is keeping staff safe, all while continuing to attempt to keep business running every day and keep moving the business forward the best we can. So it's been a unique position to be in when you're not a licensed doctor, but essentially you feel like at times you're giving healthcare and medical advice to someone on their symptoms, and if they can and can't, when can they return, and what must they provide if they do return, those sort of things, to ensure we're keeping our staff safe. And up to this point, I will say we've done a good job and have had very small numbers with our staff and keeping them and their families safe from this virus that we're going through.
Thank you. It sounds like
that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that definitely answers my question. I think a lot of people are trying to figure out what it looks like to go back to work. We're all kind of transitioning right now. And so it sounds like you all care a lot about your staff and staying up to date with the research and really trying to make the best decisions with things changing from day to day or hour to hour, right? So
it's probably the most flexible we've had to be. I would say prior to COVID, pre-COVID, we were always a fairly flexible work environment, flexible management, because of what Doug said a minute ago, and that we do have a very long and varied schedule at times. 1 week maybe the team's on the road and maybe there's only one third-party show. And then the next week we come in and we have 5 nights in a row of games and concerts. And it's exhausting for many, not leaving the arena till 2 a.m. after Beyonce finishes. And so to kind of switch gears and say, I'm not going to make you come in. It's what you're comfortable. And instead of having the attitude of, I don't care how you feel. I don't care what your comfort level is. I don't care if you have a child with asthma. You need to be in at work and I'll see you at 8:30. It's just had to be a much more flexible mindset right now with staff, given the circumstances we're in, and being very empathetic and sympathetic with them and their comfort levels and their family situations at home.
No, thank you so much. And I think, we're going to hopefully see more of that as everybody tries to transition back to a work environment where we're each interacting with each other on a daily basis instead of virtually. So Doug, can you tell us a little bit about that on your end as far as fan safety and staff and managing everybody and bringing them back in?
Yeah, I mean, the upside to not having events for a long time was really kind of watching the rest of the industry and watching, the rest of the business world, grocery stores to restaurants and how they transition, PPE for staff and social distancing and disinfecting. And, so we're not doing anything that you haven't seen in other places. But I think we have a lot more eyes on us, unlike some bars and restaurants that, can kind of do whatever and are flexible on the rules in terms of how well they enforce them. We don't have that luxury and wouldn't want that luxury. I mean, we're a public entity and we've got a very public organization, and so people have very high expectations, and for them to come back to our facility, both staff and fans, they have to feel safe and they need to feel like we've got their best interests at heart. So, 20% of, 20 to 25% of attendees, but, I can tell you our expenses are nowhere near 20 to 25%. They're much closer to 100% because of all the extra labor and, operating expenses and guidelines that we've had to implement. And so, but that's not unusual to other businesses as well, right? And it's just, it's the nature of the pandemic. And I would say it's been a very collaborative effort, HR, to facility operations, to legal, to marketing, how everybody's got to had to pull together to make this work, because nobody's done this before, right? In any industry. So anyway, we feel like we're making good inroads, but we've got a ways to go.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask you 2 individual questions pertaining to HR and also facility management. So I'm going to actually start with Doug, since I have you here already. And, you were already talking about with different events going on in the facility and staff. So what was it like taking your facility into a voting facility? Can you walk us through that experience and how that worked out there? Because I think some students don't realize, hey, not just sports are played here and concerts, right? There are other things that go on in facilities.
Well, it's actually pretty easy. I mean, from our standpoint, we're used to hosting fans. We're used to putting on events, and this was just an event with a voting machine at the end of it. And so the Harris County, in our situation, the entity that operates that is very well organized. They're used to doing this, and we needed to adapt it into our facility. So it was really a great civic opportunity. I mean, one of the things we don't normally have is 3 weeks of time, which we did for early voting, and we were able to accommodate that as well as election day. And so, we had a lot of our staff volunteer and really got to understand how unique the election process is, right, in terms of election judges and, how you qualify and what you can and can't do, as a voting institution. And then we also had drive-through voting, which was, interesting. It was the first time that had been executed in Harris County. We were one of 10 sites to do that, and so that was, but again, it was just another event, and we were pretty well versed at it, and it was a lot of fun.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, and now, Kristen, I have a question for you. With everything going on with race and equity and inclusion, can you tell us a little bit about the Houston Rockets organization and some of the best practices that you implement within HR and the hiring process with that?
Absolutely. So I would tell you there's multiple things. So one thing that we have already had in place for a few years, and that is we use a program for all of our job descriptions and job postings. And we use a program that basically we run our postings and job descriptions through it, and it gives us an assessment to ensure that it's not really targeting more towards males or targeting too much towards females, to ensure that we're using language that is really open to both genders. I would also say, all in all, compared to, let me back up, we participate in the NBA does run race and gender numbers on all the teams. And so we do provide, what our numbers are from a race standpoint, what that looks like from a leadership standpoint, what our hiring trends have been looking like. And I'm proud to say that we, for years, have been in a very good spot as it pertains to our diversity. And I feel like I had this conversation last week with somebody else. And I do feel like it also has to do with our location, with us being located in Houston. It's an extremely diverse city. So to then go look at our numbers and see that we're pretty well split all overall, and half Black, maybe it's 40% white, and the remaining are Hispanic and 2 or more races, Asian, etc. So we've had a very diverse workforce from the get-go. Do we have areas to improve in from a leadership standpoint? Absolutely. But we've done a pretty good job of really making sure that we keep a diverse workforce, which helps us be successful in all of our areas. Now, fast forward to the last, has it been 6 months or so, some of the major events in the United States that have taken place. And so some of the actions that we took as an organization, and I say we, it was not just me, it was a we thing. So it wasn't something that HR took credit for or did, but we put together for the first time a diversity and inclusion committee. So we call it our D&I task force. And so we felt like it was time for us to gather as a diverse group, diverse meaning not just on gender and race, but even also on position and different departments. And how can we get together and tackle some of these issues happening to make it a more open for our staff? How can we make a bigger impact in our community related to these subjects to make a difference longer term? So on generations to come up, how can we make a difference? And it's not something that's going to be a short-term fix or a quick fix. It's things that we can put in place now that will be in place for a longer term to hopefully have a bigger impact as it pertains to diversity, inclusion, and race and equity. And our president participates in that committee as well. And so we have created, I would say we're just kind of moving past the new aspect of that committee, and that we've put our goals in place. We've set out kind of, these are our values and what are important to us as a committee and what we want to accomplish. So now let's start working on it. So a couple of things that we've started is we've started a resource hub for staff online in our internal intranet where they can go to, and it's like an employee resource hub, and they can go on there, and we've put on there different, whether it be related historical articles, movies, books that are recommended for staff that they can watch or read that will help them see and understand some of the historic things that have occurred in some of the African-American historical libraries. We've also brought in some guest speakers. Doug mentioned about the voting that we had, which was a huge event for us in Houston. So we had brought in the person that oversees the voting efforts for City of Houston. He came on and spoke to our staff and talked about kind of what they're hoping for, why it's so important to get out and vote, and what they were doing as a city and how we could help with getting voting access to those lower level neighborhoods that don't necessarily have either access or transportation to go and vote, and how we could help with that. We've also created ERGs, which stands for Employee Resource Groups. So an employee resource group, so we've had after, it wasn't the George Floyd, after another incident that occurred that I'm drawing a blank on, we allowed socially distanced and safe a Black employee group to come together and talk about kind of what they were seeing and hearing, how it was making them feel, how that was making them scared, and so that as an internal organization, they could talk amongst each other and basically just speak up. So I will tell you, our team president is very passionate about this subject and has participated in those, although he is not in that example, he's not African American, but he was still there showing that he was there to fight and support and make sure our staff all know that kind of we're all in this together, no matter what maybe your gender or race is. So we've definitely taken it serious. We've definitely put initiatives together for it, and it's definitely a top focus for us as an organization.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think a lot of times the students see the players and see the coach, and they don't necessarily realize on the back end, that they, where they're going to be pursuing opportunities, how important those things are to know, and what organizations are doing to be more inclusive and to be more diverse. And I think it's so great that you all are being proactive. And thank you so much for sharing that. That was actually my next question, but you answered it. So I really appreciate it. So the next questions, we're finishing up here, but I have a few more questions for you all. What advice do you have for our future leaders in sport management? And Doug, you want to take this one?
I tell people that sports is like business, right? And it's all primarily focused on revenue. So if you can be a revenue generator, you can always find a job in our industry, right? So the operations, the arena operations side, has revenue, has expenses, et cetera, et cetera. But if you can sell sponsorship, you can sell tickets, you can sell food and beverage. And at some point in your career, everybody's a salesman. And so the sooner you learn that and understand that, the better off you will be. So even if you don't always want to stay in revenue generation, ticket sales or sponsorships or whatever the case may be, having an understanding of what that space is like and how difficult it is, it's a great entry-level opportunity. And it's also the most, it also has the most openings in entry-level, ticket sales and sponsorship and the like. So, that's generally my advice is if you can sell, you can always find a job. And that's a great place to get started.
Thank you. And Kristen?
So my advice that I often tell students is an internship is not just a requirement to check the box for your degree program. It is so important. It is so critical to set them up for success. So when you're looking at, let's say, 2 brand new grads applying for the exact same position, and they have no experience, right? Because they've been going to college, or maybe they were an athlete in college. Their internship and the effort they put into that internship is really what's going to set them apart from somebody else. So when you get your internship, it's so important and critical, but it's also important that you put 100% into it, that you're engaged and that you're participating. Because I will tell you that the sports industry is not as large as it seems. So in the NBA, there's only 30 of us. There's not that many of us. And we all know each other. And so we also all help each other out. And so there's time and time again, whether it be a current employee or it's an intern, we say, hey, let me know what position and team you're looking at, and let me help you get in the door and get an interview, because we all know each other. It's a small world. And so if you come to an internship for me, or our organization, and you're not available very often, you're only doing half-ass work, guess what? It's going to make it harder for you to get that full-time position, either with us or with another team. So taking the internship seriously is very important. And to me, it's critical in setting up the start of your long-term career. And oftentimes, sometimes we'll get an athlete that comes in, and I have so much respect for athletes to go through college. College isn't easy. So when you're juggling a curriculum and juggling an athletic schedule and the demands of that and the travel required with that, I have so much respect for that time management. But at the same time, unless they have plans for going into a professional sports career, when it comes down to that junior, senior year, they're going to have to really buckle down and double up on maintaining all of their workload and getting an internship in. Because the excuse of, well, I don't have any experience or internship because I ran track in college, so I didn't have the time for it. Well, guess what? The other person that's applying for the exact same internship or maybe entry-level job, they put in the work. So I think it's super important to realize that you've got to put in that effort and take it seriously to set you up for long-term success.
Thank you. So we're getting to the end of our questions, like I said before, and I wanted to preface this last question. There is a disconnect between what students learn in the classroom and what sport industry leaders are implementing. So what tips do you have for educators in academia, like myself, on how to bridge the gap between the academy and the industry? What do we need to be teaching our students in sport management? So Doug, if you want to take this one first, and then Kristen.
Well, I don't know that I've had that question before, but I think the answer is obviously, bringing in guest speakers is important, understanding kind of what is going on in the industry I think people in y'all's industry need to focus on what are entry-level jobs, right? What are the skill sets for those? I mean, it's one thing to talk about being a team president, but that's way down the road, right? And if you're trying to put people into the workforce, which is what, universities should be doing, it's, where can they get started? What are those pipelines with teams, et cetera? And then, kind of what are those skill sets? So every project ought to be based around, selling sponsorships, selling tickets, facility management, what's more, so depending on what the track is, but, that's really where you could help the industry is exposing students early on.
Thank you. That's some great advice. And Kristen?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think giving them a realistic expectation as to what they can expect whenever they start. That's something it's, I think, somewhat unique to sports, in that sports, you are going to start at the bottom. You always hear that and say you got to work your way up. That's really true. It may not be true at ExxonMobil down the street, but in sports, that's really the story. You start out as, maybe you're starting out part-time, or maybe you start out as an intern, or maybe you start out at an entry-level sales position, which may sound horrible to some and great to others, but that really is often, we are definitely like by the book as far as starting out and working your way up. So I think they have to be open-minded to that, and be willing to put in the work, for lack of better terms. But also what's unique about sports is, if you're open to leaving your hometown and being open to traveling, it opens up your opportunities so much.
Yeah, thank you. So just being able to travel, and that flexibility piece that you were talking about earlier just gives you more of an opportunity to learn. And it looks like, both from your resumes, from what I saw on LinkedIn, that you all have had experience outside of the industry as well as in. So I definitely think that would be helpful as well. So I'm going to finish up this interview with one last question. Do you all have any additional advice or information you would like to share with us before we sign off today?
I always tell students that there's no reason you can't be working part-time in our industry, right? Every facility, the soccer stadium, the arena, the baseball stadium, they need part-time concessions worker, they need part-time usher, the guest services representative, they need part-time facility changeover people. So those are great opportunities to really understand what the business is, and to get to know faces, and then and to understand what an organization is like. So there's it's not just internships. There's plenty of opportunities, and it also just teaches you kind of what the industry is like from the inside. Once you've cleaned out a concession stand, you have a different mindset for what that work is really like. Or taking care of a suite as an attendant, right? So that's a great way to learn the industry while you're going to school.
Thank you.
Yeah, ditto to that. That's great advice. Cleaning out a concession stand, or dealing with an angry customer that walks out the window because they're not happy because they're busy, gives you a whole new view of really behind the business scenes of putting on an event, for lack of better terms, right? Putting on that concert or that game. Right now, unfortunately, we're not in the concert world right now, but whenever that is active and running and going, it's a different world. And every show is different, and every show has different requirements. And so it really gives a good behind the scenes understanding of kind of what it would take, on a full-time basis, or maybe it's on when I get that position that I have my eyes on, that's what I want. Once I have that piece of paper in my hand, that's what I'm going for. And to be able to see and work with all the different levels of individuals that it takes. So yeah, I love that advice, that every team has multiple different part-time opportunities and a multitude of different positions and responsibilities.
Well, thank you all for, coming and sharing all of your experience with us. I know that I've learned a lot from both a facility and an HR standpoint. And it's just really interesting to see how you all are navigating COVID, and how you all are navigating diversity and inclusion, and just the advice you have with experience. That seems like it's the most important thing. If you don't experience it, you really don't know, how to navigate this world. So Really appreciate you all taking this time, and thanks again.
Anytime. Best of luck, and go Rockets, and be safe, everyone.
Go Rockets.